I stood there on the damn porch holding a smoked brisket I spent 10 hours on, and a bottle of bourbon I'd driven 2 counties over to get. The house smelled like cinnamon and roast turkey. Wind cut through my blazer, but I stayed planted. I hadn't even knocked, just rang the bell once. And the door opened like they'd been waiting. There they were, my parents, Roger and Evelyn Matthews, not even pretending. Dad's eyes were sharp, like he'd been rehearsing this all morning. "You're not invited, Russell," he said. That was it. No hello, no questions, just that. I didn't say anything at first. Couldn't. I shifted the brisket in my hands and stared past them, trying to make sense of it. The dining room was already full. My brother Drew was at the head of the table, carving into a ham like he owned the place. Uncle Carl sat beside him, laughing with a glass of wine. And then I saw Dave, my so-called best friend, grinning like it was just another Thursday night poker game. Nobody looked toward the door. Nobody even flinched. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Are you serious? I finally said, my voice cracking halfway through. Dad didn't blink. Turn around, son. I looked at Mom. Her eyes didn't soften. She just crossed her arms and said, "Your choices have consequences." I almost laughed. I really almost did. Because these were the people who raised me, preached about family and loyalty like gospel. Now I was standing outside like a goddamn delivery driver. "Dave," I called out, still staring inside. He didn't move, didn't even glance up. I stood there like an idiot, holding that brisket that still smelled like hickory and spice, trying to figure out what the hell I did to deserve this. A dog barked down the street. Someone's kid rode by on a scooter. Then Mom stepped forward and gently pulled the bottle from my hand, like I was a drunk uncle crashing someone else's holiday. "Go home, Russell," she said, and closed the door. I stood there another 10 seconds, maybe 15. Then I turned, walked down the steps, and got in my truck. Didn't know where I was going, just drove. Ended up by the lake, parked, engine running, hands tight on the wheel. The brisket sat in the passenger seat like a bad joke. I didn't even turn the radio on, just stared at the water and let the silence answer the question I didn't want to ask. How the hell did it come to this? The lake was cold and quiet, and I didn't move for a while. Just sat there gripping the wheel. My breath fogged up the windshield while I stared through the glass, like something out there was gonna make sense of it all. But nothing ever made sense with my family, unless you played by their rules. I grew up in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Roger and Evelyn Matthews' house, big, cold, white columns, spotless floors, and a front hall bigger than most apartments. We wore suits to dinner. I'm not exaggerating. Actual suits, 5 nights a week, unless you were sick or grounded. There were no cartoons, no backyard barbecues, no board games unless they were educational. Everything was a test, and the only grade that mattered was perfect. My dad built Matthews and Kodiker from nothing, or at least that's the version he told at every fundraiser. Started with a few hedge fund buddies and turned it into a private equity giant. 30 years of mergers, acquisitions, and squeezing the life out of anything he could flip for a return. He loved numbers, not people, not even his kids, far as I could tell. Mom played her role just as hard, ran every gala, hosted every silent auction, chaired every school board in the tri-state area like it was a second job. Kept her nails done, voice sweet, and reputation flawless. But underneath, she was stone. The second you embarrassed her, you were a problem to manage, not a child to love. Drew was the blueprint. Ivy League, polished, and born to please. Yale, of course. He had the Matthews jawline, the smooth pitch, and a knack for making people think he gave a damn. He walked straight into the firm at 22, like he'd earned it and never missed a beat. Dad used to say Drew got it. I was the one who needed to grow up. Thing is, I never wanted that life. Not like they did. I wanted to build something real, brands that meant something, stories people connected to. Not just another pitch deck with fake synergy and a bloated buyout. So I went to UConn, state school, studied marketing, paid my own way for the first 2 years before Mom caved and covered the rest, but not without saying, try not to waste it. I still joined the firm after graduation, mostly because I was tired of fighting. Figured I'd give it a shot. They stuck me in PR and client outreach, which Dad called fluff work, but it paid well and kept me close enough to see how things ran. I didn't hate it at first. I actually liked dealing with clients, figuring out brand angles, shaping messaging, But the more I dug in, the more I noticed stuff that didn't add up. Offshore accounts, shell companies that didn't match any real services, expense reports with numbers that felt inflated or just flat out wrong, clients with high risk suddenly showing sky-high returns. At first I thought I just didn't understand it. But I did. I understood it too well. And every time I asked a question, I got the same line from Drew or Dad. "Stick to your lane, Russell." I didn't know it yet, but I was about to step way out of that lane, and they were already getting ready to slam the door behind me. It started with a pitch deck. Just another Thursday grind, getting materials ready for a meeting with a group of ultra-high net worth clients. One of Dad's legacy accounts, the kind that came with private planes and quarterly offshore retreats. I was combing through their portfolio slides when I noticed something off. The numbers were too clean. Steady double-digit gains, quarter after quarter, even when the markets were trash. Looked like someone was smoothing the ride a little too perfectly. So I dug deeper, opened old statements, compared cash flows, matched them with public filings. And what I found didn't make sense. Transfers between dummy entities, fees that never showed up in official reports, dates that didn't line up. I printed it all, highlighted what I could, and walked straight into Dad's office thinking maybe, just maybe, he'd say, "Good catch." Instead, he barely glanced at the files before yanking them out of my hands. "That's above your pay grade," he said. "Stick to your little graphics and taglines." I stood there, stunned. "You're not even going to look at it?" He didn't answer, just buzzed his assistant and said, "Get Drew in here." That was the beginning of the end. After that, my access changed. Passwords I used for years suddenly didn't work. Files got moved. Client folders disappeared from my drive. The weekly meetings I ran were handed to Drew without a word. Nobody said it out loud, but it was clear. I wasn't trusted anymore. Even Dave started acting weird. I'd brought him into the firm 2 years earlier. We'd been tight since college. I vouched for him, told Dad he had the brains and polish for the high-end accounts. And at first, he delivered. But now, he kept dodging my calls, bailing on lunch, giving short answers like he was afraid to be seen with me. Then came Horizon Builders. They were a dream client, huge reputation, big contracts, clean image. Dad had tried to land them for years and never got a foot in the door. I met one of their execs at a branding seminar, and we hit it off. 3 weeks later, they signed with us. I was proud, genuinely proud, thought maybe this was my shot to earn back some respect. But when I walked into Dad's office with the contract, he didn't even look up. "You trying to build your own empire now?" he said. "Is that what this is?" "No, I'm trying to do my job," I said. "They came to me because I knew what the hell I was doing." He leaned back, eyes cold. "You're not here to make a name. You're here to serve the family." That was it. I was done. 2 weeks later, I handed in my resignation. No speech, no drama, just a clean break. Packed up my desk, said a quiet goodbye to the handful of people who still looked me in the eye, and walked out. I didn't just quit, I launched, took Horizon and 2 other mid-sized accounts that came with me willingly, started Russell Brand Solutions in a rented office above a tire shop with a busted AC and a single intern, and I worked my ass off. For 6 months, I built something honest. No shortcuts, no cooked books, just results, real ones. And my family? They pretended I didn't exist. No calls, no emails, no birthday texts. Drew blocked me. Mom unfollowed me. Dad told our clients I'd gone rogue. Even Dave cut ties. They didn't just cut me off, they buried me. All because I didn't play the game their way? I should have seen it coming. Thanksgiving had always been a damn production at our place. Mom used to plan it like a corporate retreat. Printed place cards, rented linens, handwritten menus. No one showed up in jeans, not even the kids. Hell, we once had a violinist in the foyer. But that year felt different. After 6 months of silence, I figured maybe things had cooled off. Pride runs hot in my family, but it burns out fast when appearances are on the line. So I called Mom the week before, straightforward, asked if dinner was still at 2. She said yes, like nothing was wrong. No cold tone, no weird pause, just, "Of course, honey, 2 o'clock. That was it. I should have pushed, should have asked who else was coming, should have known better. Instead, I spent Thanksgiving morning like a damn idiot. Got up early, smoked a brisket with cherry wood and brown sugar rub. Took my time. Picked up a bottle of small batch bourbon from a client's distillery. stuff that wasn't even in stores yet. Threw on the navy blazer Mom always said, brought out my eyes. Drove out to New Canaan. Roads were dead quiet, just frost on the grass and a couple of leaf blowers buzzing in the distance. I pulled into the driveway and saw all the usual suspects' cars already there. Drew's BMW, Uncle Carl's Tahoe, even Dave's old black pickup. Still had the cracked taillight from that camping trip we never talked about. That one hit me in the gut. He hadn't returned a text in months, and now he was inside sipping wine with my family like we were strangers. That's when the first red flag hit. It was 10 minutes to 2, and I was the last one there. I grabbed the brisket and the bourbon, walked up the steps, and rang the bell. Music cut off mid-song. I stood there waiting, heart already beating harder than it should have been. The door opened. Mom and Dad stood side by side, blocking the entrance like security at a damn club. Dad didn't blink. "You're not invited," he said. I laughed, short, dry. "Is this a joke?" "No," he said. "Turn around." I looked past them, saw the table already full. Drew was mid-toast, holding up a glass. Carl was laughing. Dave was sitting at my usual seat, the one near the fireplace. I took a step forward. "Why? What the hell did I do?" Mom didn't flinch. "Your choices have consequences, Russell." I stared at her. "You told me dinner was at 2. Her lips didn't even twitch. "Because it is. For family." She reached out and gently, too gently, took the bottle of bourbon from my hand like I was handing over a coat at the door. Dad shifted. "You made your bed." And then they shut the door. Just like that. Didn't even give me a second look. I stood there, brisket still hot in my arms, face burning in the cold. I backed off the steps, walked back to my truck, and sat down in silence. Didn't cry, didn't yell, just drove. I didn't even notice where I was going until I pulled up to the lake again. Same spot, same stupid view. I killed the engine and just sat there, hands still on the wheel, the brisket still warm on the passenger seat like it was mocking me. The silence hit harder than anything my parents said. I kept picturing Dave, sitting in my chair, laughing with Drew, holding a damn wine glass like he belonged there more than I ever did. We'd been through everything together. College, internships, breakups, even that weekend in Boston when I almost got fired and he covered for me. I brought him into my world, trusted him. And Drew, sitting at the head of the table like he'd earned it. Like he didn't spend years stepping over me. I spent my whole life cleaning up behind those two, thinking if I just worked harder, played it smart, they'd finally treat me like I belonged. But I didn't belong. I never had. And now I knew it. Then something clicked, not a thought, more like a trigger getting pulled. I reached into the glove box and pulled out my phone. Mike Freeman. He'd called me a few months back, just checking in. We hadn't talked much since college, but we'd always respected each other. He worked for the SEC now. I'd told him back then that some things at the firm felt off, just enough to plant the seed. Said I had files backed up, copies of reports, client statements, stuff I wasn't even supposed to have. But I never followed through. I told myself it wasn't my fight. That changed today. I tapped his name and hit call. "Russ?" he answered after 2 rings. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "I'm ready. Let's do it." "You sure?" "Yeah. I'm done protecting people who'd rather see me frozen out than do the right thing." We set a meeting for the next morning. No drama, no fear, just facts. I drove home in silence. House was dark when I walked in, just the kitchen light buzzing and the heat kicking in slow. I dropped the brisket on the counter, grabbed a glass, and poured the bourbon I was supposed to share with my family. Then I went to the closet and pulled out the old box I hadn't touched since the day I quit. Thick envelope, labeled files, USB drives, printed emails, meeting notes, backup client data. I dumped it all on the table and started sorting. The more I looked, the more my stomach turned. Fake returns, transactions between shell accounts that didn't even exist on paper, layered movement of funds between consultants and holding firms that smelled like front companies. One internal memo even outlined how to temporarily enhance quarterly performance for strategic accounts. And then came the signatures, mine included. Documents I never signed, contracts I never saw, statements I never approved, all signed with my name in some shaky-ass forgery that wouldn't pass a 6th grade handwriting class. They hadn't just cut me out. They'd used me, set me up to be the fall guy the second things got hot. I sat there, staring at the mess, and felt something sharp settle in my chest. Not anger, not fear, resolve. They wanted war? Fine, I'd give them one. I didn't sleep. Just watched the clock until it hit 7. Then I packed up every file, every backup drive, and took it all to Mike's office in Stamford. He cleared his desk the second I walked in. No pleasantries, just, let's get to work. We spent 3 hours cataloging everything. I laid it out clean. Folders by client, date ranges, cross-referenced reports. The signatures I flagged, the offshore money paths, the internal emails. I'd done my homework, and it showed. Mike kept nodding as he clicked through files. "This is bad," he muttered. "How bad?" He leaned back. "This isn't just creative accounting. This is deliberate, coordinated." I pulled out one more envelope I hadn't opened until that morning. It held a printout of emails between Drew and Dave, ones I never knew existed until I dug deeper into an old shared drive. Mike read them in silence. Then he looked up at me. Jesus, they planned it. The emails spelled it out. Drew telling Dave to keep me occupied with external accounts, saying I was a good face to distract clients while they restructured the books. Dave had replied with, "I've got him covered. He trusts me." I sat there while Mike kept flipping through more. Then came the trust account. One I never touched, but apparently existed in my name. I'd found it buried in a quarterly report. Thought it was a mistake, until I saw my forged signature authorizing a withdrawal. $80,000. Gone. Moved into another shell firm, tied to one of Dad's Cayman accounts. Mike whistled low. They didn't just throw you under the bus. They drove it back and forth a few times. By lunchtime, the SEC had enough to move. That afternoon, the first headline hit. SEC freezes assets at Matthews & Co. Pending investigation. I stared at the screen like it was someone else's life, but it wasn't. It was mine. I picked up my phone and sent 3 texts, first to 2 major clients who still trusted me, told them to review their holdings immediately, then one to Emma, my cousin, who handled compliance at a law firm in Hartford. She'd always played it straight. I warned her that things were about to get ugly. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up like it was on fire. First it was Mom, then Dad, then Drew, Dave. They came in back to back, all calling. I let them ring, then came the texts. "You made a mistake, Russell. We can fix this. Talk to me." "What did you give them?" "You're not thinking straight." Then, "You just ruined your own family." I didn't respond. The last message came from Uncle Carl. "They're blaming you?" That one hit different. I stared at it for a while, then messaged back. "Of course they are." Because now I understood this wasn't just damage control. This was survival. And if they could burn me to save themselves, they wouldn't hesitate. They'd been laying this trap for months, maybe longer. The dinner setup, the silence, even bringing Dave in and turning him against me, all of it was a slow kill. But they underestimated me. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought loyalty meant rolling over. They were wrong. And now they were exposed. It was just past 8 when the buzzer rang. I knew it was them before I even checked the intercom. Something about the silence outside, too still, like the air was waiting for a punch. I pressed the button. "Yeah?" No answer, just the door unlocking. They must have followed someone in or bribed a neighbor, whatever. A few seconds later, they were at my door, all 4 of them. Dad looked ready to blow, red-faced, tie loose, top button popped. Mom was pale, lips tight like she was holding back a scream. Drew was pacing the hallway, phone in hand, sweating like he'd just run from court. And Dave looked like a kicked dog. I opened the door just enough to block the frame. "You've got 30 seconds, I said. Dad pushed his way in anyway. "You need to call the SEC right now." I didn't move. "No." "Russell," Mom snapped, stepping in after him. "This isn't just about you. You don't understand the damage you've done." "I understand perfectly." Drew slipped past and started pacing my living room. "We can still fix this. Say it was a mistake. Say the data got corrupted." I turned to him. "You forged my signature, Drew. That clear enough for you?" His jaw clenched. It was short-term liquidity balancing. No one lost money. That's not how the law works, and you know it. Dave walked in last. Didn't say a word at first. Just stood near the door, head down. I didn't even look at him. Couldn't. Dad got louder. "This affects the whole firm, the entire family name. You could have come to me. I did, remember? I stepped toward him. I brought you those files 6 months ago. You called it above my pay grade. Well, guess what? Now it's above yours. Mom started in, voice shaking. You were always emotional, always so quick to run. You don't understand the responsibility your father carries. You just, spare me the guilt trip. You had a chance to tell the truth. You chose denial. Dad reached into his coat and pulled out a folded envelope, tossed it on my table like a grenade. $500,000. Signed a statement saying it was a misunderstanding. You didn't see the whole picture. I stared at the envelope. Didn't touch it. You think I'm for sale? I asked. That's your answer to everything, right? Buy the silence. Control the story. It's not about silence, Mom said. It's about protecting what we built. No, it's about protecting you. Dave finally spoke. Russ, I never meant to screw you over. I looked at him, slow and steady. Then why were you reporting everything I said to Drew? He swallowed. I was stuck between... And what? You sleeping with him too? I asked. His face dropped. He didn't deny it. Of course he didn't. Uncle Carl showed up 10 minutes into the circus, walked in like he already knew what he'd find, waved off the shouting and pulled me aside. They're getting desperate, he said under his breath. They're talking about pinning it all on you, saying you acted alone, that you had access and went rogue. I nodded once. Let them try. Then I turned back to the room. You all need to get out, I said. Now. Dad took a step toward me. We're still your family. Not anymore. Any future contact goes through my lawyer. Mom flinched like I slapped her. Dave looked like he might cry. Drew just shook his head. Uncle Carl didn't say a word, just waited by the door. I walked over and held it open. They left one by one, nobody meeting my eyes. No apology. No confession, just that same smug fear I'd seen at the firm when someone's name showed up on the audit list. I shut the door, locked it, and didn't move. That was the moment it ended. I wasn't their son anymore, and I was finally fine with that. The door barely clicked shut behind them before the calls started again. Blocked numbers, unknowns, legal reps, PR firms. I turned the phone off and shoved it in a drawer. I didn't need more noise. The next few weeks were a blur of headlines, subpoenas, and screaming stockholders. Matthews and Comwer went into freefall. The feds moved fast, froze all major accounts within 72 hours. Clients pulled their funds. Half the board resigned. The firm bled out in real time. By week 2, Dad was stripped of executive control. I got a call from the receiver. They were assembling an interim board. Said I had credibility now. Clients trusted me. They needed a clean name to stabilize things. I said I'd join under 3 conditions. Total transparency. No family involvement. I picked the audit team. They agreed. I walked back into that office not as a son, not as a subordinate, but as someone finally holding the wheel. Mom disappeared from every gala, committee, and fundraiser she used to rule. Her friends stopped tagging her. Photos vanished. Just one wide shot from a museum event with her standing alone, smiling too hard for the camera. Drew vanished too. I figured he went underground, somewhere quiet with a lawyer and a therapist. I didn't care either way. Then came the letter from Dave, handwritten, full of crap about regret, confusion, friendship, betrayal. Said he missed our version of family. Said he'd been manipulated. I never opened the second page. Uncle Carl stayed close. He stepped in where no one else would. Late nights reviewing retirement plans, talking to terrified employees, meeting with outside counsel. He was exhausted, but steady. You saved the place from a complete collapse, he told me once, over takeout in a boardroom. No, I said. I just didn't let them burn it all down. Emma joined my firm 3 weeks in. She quit her job and walked into my office like she already had a plan. I've got 10 high-value clients ready to jump ship, she said. You want them or not? Bring them, I said. But do it clean. She did. Within a month, we doubled our client base. All legit. No smoke, no mirrors. I started sleeping again. One night, Drew texted. First I'd heard from him since the night they tried to corner me in my own apartment. I'm in therapy, trying to understand how I let it get this far. Genuinely sorry. You didn't deserve it. I stared at the message for a full minute. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. Just let it sit there. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. I wasn't waiting for apologies. That weight didn't belong to me. Let them carry their shame. Let them explain to the press, the lawyers, the clients. I had my own work to do, real work, fixing broken systems, protecting the people they nearly destroyed. For once, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't a Matthews anymore, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving in my own place. 2-bedroom condo, nothing flashy, clean floors, warm lighting, kitchen that smelled like roasted garlic and fresh cornbread. I didn't bother with a centerpiece or matching plates. Just set the table, opened a few bottles, and left the front door unlocked. Mike and his wife were first to arrive. He brought a 6-pack and a pan of sweet potatoes topped with toasted marshmallows like a proud middle schooler. His wife hugged me tight and handed me a mason jar of cranberry chutney. Emma came next, arms full, pumpkin pie, a thermos of cider, and a stack of mismatched cloth napkins she said she found on clearance. Uncle Carl showed up in his usual leather jacket, holding a foil-covered tray. "Is that brisket?" I asked. He grinned. "Didn't want you stuck with all the glory this year." A couple folks from my firm filtered in after that. Jenna from client accounts brought homemade rolls. Steve, my newest hire, made mac and cheese that could have stolen the spotlight if we let it. No one wore suits. No one tried to out-toast anyone or name-drop cities they'd flown in from. We just sat, ate, talked, laughed hard enough that I had to open a window halfway through dinner. It felt real, easy, unforced, like breathing after being underwater too long. Halfway through the meal, someone knocked. I opened the door, and there was Drew, dark jeans, plain sweater, holding a pie box with both hands. Pecan, the one Dad always liked. He didn't say anything, just looked at me, eyes tired, jaw tight like he expected the door to slam. I looked at the box, then back at him. "You make that?" I asked. He gave a faint smile. "Store-bought, baby steps." I stepped aside. "Get in here." No hug, no handshake. Just a quiet walk to the table. Everyone glanced up. Emma gave him a polite nod. Mike raised his glass but said nothing. I pulled out a chair and said, "Happy Thanksgiving." Drew nodded once and sat down. The pie stayed sealed until dessert. No one touched it, but no one said a word either. After everyone left, I cleaned up solo, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters, took out the trash, stood in the doorway of my own kitchen, tired as hell, but full in a way I hadn't felt in years. I'd lost the Matthews name, but I'd found something better. My life, my circle, my tribe, the ones who showed up when things fell apart, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Far as I'm concerned, that's family.